Welcome back. So, tire fire, a term that I have used on this channel dating back, half a decade, more than half a decade, talking about teams that are going through some stuff. And tire fire is a reference to basically when you don't know when it's going to come to an end. And in the case of the Buffalo Sabres, probably not the first time I've referred to them as a tire fire. Very likely not the first time. Probably not the second time. So for Sabres fans, this is something you've seen before. Now for Rangers fans, I don't think we've referred to it as a tire fire before. This seems to be new territory for them. Even when they went through the retool where, they send out the letter to the fans and all of that fun stuff. Well, then they ended up signing Panarin and not doing a full-on retool or rebuild. But it worked out pretty well for the Rangers, right? Now, if you only grade that by Stanley Cups, well, then almost every team in the league is a failure at that point. That's an argument we've had for many years on this channel, too. I don't think you can just grade a team's success on Stanley Cup wins because, again, you're making it so that almost everybody in the league's a failure every year. One team's not a failure, the other 31, all of you suck. And I can't get there. So, looking at the Buffalo Sabres, they're currently, as I'm recording this, winless in their last 11. And it feels like it's getting worse. So you have the owner, Terry Pegula, come in, say we're going to do, it's fine. I'm not moving anybody in this room. Nobody's getting fired. Adams is sticking around. Everything's great. Adams says this is a chance for a reset, and then Buffalo out and laid an egg. They lose 6-1 in Montreal. And so it doesn't feel like Kevyn Adams ends up making things better. It doesn't feel like Terry Pegula makes things better. It's only one game since that, so you don't want to overreact, but at the same time, when it's the 11th game of a winless streak, it's hard not to see that as pretty damning. Now, on the Rangers side, they've won 3 of their last 14. Prior to that, they had a good record. Prior to that, we were talking about whether or not they'd finish first or second in the division. Maybe third. Nowhere lower than third. Well, winning 3 out of 14 means that storyline's changed completely. And general manager Chris Drury, who was widely respected with the job that he had done in New York, is now under fire. He is now under fire for the moves that have been made and how they've been made. And we'll talk about that. So, the Buffalo Sabres this past season had a winning record. The season before, they had a winning record. That is the first time that they've had back-to-back winning records since 2012, which was the first season that they missed the playoffs. 2011, they made the playoffs. Of course, they were over 500. Meaning that from 2012-2013 until 2021-2022, they were either at or below 500. And they were only at 500 the 2012-2013 lockout shortened season. Outside of that, they were below 500 every season. Some years they're close. But still, being below NHL 500 means you're not in the playoffs. You're probably not close to the playoffs. And I talked about that in a Buffalo video not too long ago. So on the Rangers side, it's quite a different story. They won the President's Trophy last season. This was the best team in the NHL's regular season. And I've seen the comments about, hey, this team was flawed. We knew it was flawed last season. And the playoffs being mentioned. Now, the way that the playoffs from last year get talked about, you would think Florida won 4 straight against the Rangers. They didn't. The Rangers lost that series in 6. So they lose 4-6 against Florida, a team that won the Stanley Cup. So comparing them to Florida makes total sense because that's the team you were against in the conference final. But I do think there's been some overreaction since then for the Rangers and their play. As I've stated, their numbers last year, 5-on-5, weren't great. But they weren't awful. They weren't like last in the league. This year, their 5-on-5 numbers have been objectively awful. So that play has definitely gotten worse. Now, looking at the coaches, Lindy Ruff in Buffalo is not getting blamed for this and shouldn't. Really shouldn't. They just brought in Lindy Ruff. And at this point, pointing the finger at a coach and going, well, it's his fault, our record's bad, it's not going to fly with anybody. Not Sabres fans. I don't think it's going to fly with the Buffalo Sabres themselves. And they'd be right. I don't think this is a coaching issue in Buffalo. On the Rangers side, you have Peter Laviolette, who recently said, we can get ourselves out of this. We just have to stick with it. And the positivity from Laviolette is going to be received one of two ways. Either people say, hey, Laviolette's doing what he can to support the team, and I agree with that, or he's delusional, this team's a mess. So you can have one of two reactions. I guess you could have apathy. That's a third reaction. You just don't really care one way or the other. But I don't get the feeling Laviolette's job's on the line yet. Although it could be, because when a team's won 3 out of 14, it's always possible that the GM goes, fine, I'll get rid of the coach. I would be concerned about that if I was Chris Drury, because you've already got a roster that there's all kinds of discussions about how much the players are not happy with the moves Drury's made. I think if he made a change with the coach, and if that coach has been supporting him the whole way through in his decisions, it might be more difficult. So if Laviolette has signed off on and agreed with all the decisions made by Drury, that may very well be a reason Drury keeps him around. Now, looking at the cap space situation, both of these teams currently have cap space according to Cap Friendly. Buffalo, $9,768,904. Puckpedia, did I say Cap Friendly? It's an old error. Cap Friendly is gone. Thanks, Capitals. Puckpedia, their cap space for the Rangers, $7,300,694. And I'll also say this, Puckpedia, very good accounts to follow, and they're very quick to let you know what each trade's going to do to a caps situation for each team. And honestly, I'm going to keep saying Cap Friendly here and there by accident, but I don't notice a big difference between Puckpedia and Cap Friendly in general. But I didn't use some of the tools that were on Cap Friendly when it was still publicly available. Thanks, Capitals. All right, now talking about the offseason, I want to talk about each team's offseason. So Buffalo focused mostly on the bottom six. Their scoring, I think they were counting on it bouncing back, which really it hasn't got back to where it was 2 seasons prior. So June 29th, they traded for Beck Malenstein. Seemed a bit steep to trade a second rounder for Malenstein, but speed in the bottom six is important. Ryan McLeod was traded for on July the 5th, a trade which at the time everybody said they're crazy. Matt Savoy's going to be a great NHLer. What are they thinking? But Ryan McLeod's been a very good addition for Buffalo. So while is it a tire fire will be answered with the word yes for Buffalo, could the tire fire be worse? I guess so. Sure. If they didn't trade for McLeod, sure. Now the signings, Aube-Kubel, Lafferty, Zucker, and Reimer. And you have to ask yourself, too, when your general manager's standing up there going, I can't sign free agents, do these guys answer with, we signed? What do you mean you can't sign free agents? So maybe there'd be a little bit of, but I came here, especially Zucker. He got a pretty good payday from Buffalo. So at any rate, looking at the Rangers side of things. So I did get into their cap space, right? $7,300,694. I did. Now, on June 24th, the mess starts for the Rangers. Barclay Goodrow had a 15-team no-trade list. San Jose's on it. So to get around it, they waive Goodrow. He gets claimed by San Jose. He's gone. Goodrow at the time was not told, said that he was not told until basically the last moment. Like, yeah, no, we're waiving you and you're going to end up going to San Jose. So he was surprised by it. It caught him off guard. And it caught the team off guard. All the reporting at the time was it caught the team off guard. Chris Kreider talked publicly about how difficult that was. It was a good friend. He said, I got a friend for life in Barclay, and it was tough to watch him go through that. And so I think that's one thing you have to keep in mind when you're a GM is you got to keep those glue guys around. It feels like Barclay Goodrow might have been one of those glue guys for the Rangers in the locker room. And when you move those guys out, you might be pulling the pin on a grenade and not realize it. So July 1st, they traded for Riley Smith, which looked like a decent pickup, and some of the cap money that they saved by, having Goodrow go to San Jose, they use on Smith. But Smith's been a healthy scratch at points this season, is not the player that he was 6-7 years ago. So there's rumors that he's going to be on his way out of New York as well. And who knows, maybe he's one of the ones that's not all that happy with the way things are going. December the 6th, Trouba traded to Anaheim. This also seemed to come out of seemingly nowhere, where Chris Drury's like, yeah, so you're going on waivers if you don't accept a trade. Here's our plan. And so Jacob Trouba, his agent, and Jacob Trouba's wife, they all discussed over what would work best, and Trouba decided to go to Anaheim. And Trouba, I think, is fitting in decently with Anaheim. I think he's done a decent job there. Is he ever going to be worth that cap hit? No, probably not. But he's doing a decent job in Anaheim. And there's been a lot of talk about how players weren't happy with how that was handled either. So you've got multiple players who, by all accounts, were popular in that locker room. They get moved out in a way that the players aren't happy with, which got around both of their no-trade clauses. Now, I've seen people saying, hey, Jeff Gorton signed those no-trade clauses are not Chris Drury's, but he inherited them. And the no trade clause, to me, it's something that you sign the player to, and the idea is that they'll sign for a little less money for that job security. And some players, you could argue their contracts aren't necessarily a discount, but that should be how that works. And that when they've got a no trade clause, you talk to them, you work through it with them, and you try to find a solution that works for both parties. A no trade clause doesn't mean that you have to go scorched earth on the player. You don't. The no trade clause has been, moved around by plenty of teams with plenty of players over the years with very little trouble. There have been problems, but usually it's, I don't want to go to that team, and the team goes, well, and that's kind of what happened here. But again, Trouba decides to pick Anaheim. Now, Capo Caco, who had been a healthy scratch and said, I wasn't the worst player on the team, he's now off to Seattle as of last night. And Caco saying, yep, reset. I needed a reset, needed a fresh start. And there might be other members of the Rangers, as well as members of the Sabres, who are looking forward to a restart. Now, in free agency, Sam Carrick appears to be the only one that they signed. Vaakanainen signed with the Ducks, re-signed with the Ducks, and then, of course, they acquired Vaakanainen. Does that count? I don't think that counts. But we're looking at two teams in very different manners that have got to what is essentially the same spot. They are teams that are watching as their playoff hopes drain away, and we're not to Christmas yet. So, looking at the playoff chances, The Athletic has Buffalo at 3%. Money Puck has Buffalo at 3.5% in terms of being able to make the playoffs. Hockey Reference has them at 4%, so that percentage just keeps going up. If I find enough of these playoff chances metrics, I'm going to find one that says Buffalo has an 80% chance, but I wouldn't have enough room on the board, and I'm not sure where that would come from. But I thought it was funny that it kept going up by half a percentage, whereas it's all over the place for the New York Rangers. The Athletic gives the Rangers a 24% chance to make the playoffs. Seriously, if I had said before the season started, I think the Rangers are going to fall apart, I give them, 24% chance of making the playoffs, there would have been a lot of people saying, I don't know if I can watch this content anymore. He's clearly had a stroke. And they wouldn't have been wrong. Like, I honestly, I would not have made that prediction at all. Then there's Money Puck. 5.5% chance of Money Puck. Money Puck does not like the Rangers' chances. Hockey Reference has the Rangers at 27.3% in terms of a chance to make the playoffs. Everybody's below 30%. So this 14-game stretch for the Rangers has really taken down their Stanley Cup playoff chances. I remember early in the season, I think the Rangers were at like 99%. And so, yeah, that's fallen. Now, I've talked about the cap situation for these teams recently, so I'll just go over some of the bigger contracts and just some players here that might be untouchable. Thompson, I think, in Buffalo's untouchable. He has that cap hit of a little over $7 million until 2030. If tomorrow Kevin Adams came out and said, hey, we're making Tage Thompson available, 31 general managers are going to be calling because he is a very good, strong forward, goal scorer, and his cap hit is very good for what he brings. Cousins, $7.1 million till 2030, so his contract ends the same year as Tage Thompson's. I don't think there'll be as much interest in Cousins once we get to that stage if we haven't already. There's been a lot of talk around Cousins, but I haven't heard anything concrete in terms of him being on the block. But Cousins is not performing as well as Thompson. Might be tougher to trade him, and you wouldn't get as much back for Cousins. Dahlin, $11 million cap hit till 2032. Powers got an $8.35 million contract till 2031, which brings us to Bowen Byram, who's at a $3.85 million cap hit until this coming summer, where he's a restricted free agent. So it could be a very expensive blue line, or all these rumors about Byram maybe being on his way out of Buffalo. That could end up happening. It would be weird if they traded Byram. It doesn't feel like it's that long since they got him. But maybe the argument could be made that his place is kind of redundant because they already have Dahlin and Power. And you could make the argument, too, that it's going to be a lot of money to re-sign Byram. But this isn't a team that's in any kind of cap trouble. So I'd be kind of surprised if that was the case. Luukkonen has a $4.75 million cap hit till 2029. He's played very well this year. Luukkonen's not the problem. And goaltending in general in Buffalo I don't think is a problem. I know Levi's numbers have been a bit pedestrian, but he's a young goaltender. It happens. Then we get over to the Rangers side. Panarin, $11.64 million cap hit. I don't think there's any chance he gets moved this year, but his contract expires in 2026. So next season, we could start hearing discussions of Panarin, especially if this team continues to crash, and they don't seem to have any intention of changing that. Zibanejad, $8.5 million cap hit till 2030. Ranger fans have been yelling for him to get traded for quite some time and keep getting trolled by Chris Drury as he trades other players instead. But the reality is that at an $8.5 million cap hit for Zibanejad until 2030, that is still a contract that is very high, very difficult to move. I think if they came out tomorrow and said, well, Zibanejad's available, I don't know which teams are calling. I don't know which teams are going to pick that player up, especially in a case where if the Rangers don't agree to retain, say, half of it. I think if the Rangers agreed to retain half of it, might make it more palatable. But still, 2030 is a long time. Kreider, $6.5 million cap hit till 2027. Famously was part of a notice they sent out to other teams. Like, hey, these guys are available. And then, oh, it leaked out? Of course it did. You sent the memo to every team in the league. Of course it leaked out. And I can't imagine Kreider feels all that good coming out of that either. Kreider, one of the best goal scorers the Rangers have ever had, right under the bus. Trocheck, $5.63 million cap hit till 2029. I don't think Trocheck's had a great season, but I don't think he's going to be on the block. But let's just say, for argument's sake, he did go on the block. I think you'd get calls. That $5.63 million cap hit's not impossible to absorb. They might ask for the Rangers to eat part of that contract, but I think if they did move Trocheck, there'd be a market. Now, Lafreniere's not going anywhere, but I wanted to put his cap hit on the board. $7.45 million till 2032. Lafreniere had a very good start. He seems to have quieted down since then. And that's a problem. That's where if you're Chris Drury and you're looking for a reason to say, maybe I make a change behind the bench, you might look at the production from some of these players and say, we're not getting what we want from them, and that can trace back to Peter Laviolette. It's part of the reason coaches get swapped out often. And then there's Igor. He gets his contract extension, $11.5 million, till 2033. So he has a lot of years with the New York Rangers upcoming. And I'll go out on a limb and say by 2033, they'll have a different GM. I'll go out on a limb and say that. But for Igor, he's probably okay with staying with the Rangers because he did sign that long-term extension. But what kind of team is he going to be behind? Will they be a contender throughout most of that contract? Are they going to go into a rebuild, a retool? We shall see. Now, trying to find that, light at the end of the tunnel. So looking at their overall numbers. The Buffalo Sabres at home are 6-9-3. On the road, they're 5-8-1. That's not good. Home, away, doesn't matter. Against the West, they're 7-4-2. That's not bad. But against the East, they're 4-13-2. So that's a problem because they're obviously going to play more games against the East than the West. In October, they were 4-5-1. In November, 7-6-1. So things seem to be going all right. And then 0-6-2 in December. So the picture at the start of December was one of a team that was maybe on the cusp. Maybe they'll be able to get into contention. The 0-6-2 run in December has really submarined that. Then on the Rangers side, at home they're 7-8-1, and on the road they're 8-7. That home record doesn't make any sense. I would say that with the Rangers, the talent that they have, they should have, so that's 16 games, they should have won 10 of them. I'd say minimum they should have won 10 of them because they're the team that won the President's Trophy last year. They went all the way to the conference final. People focus on how they got knocked out, and look how Florida knocked them out. But they still knocked two teams out before that. So it's not all doom and gloom for me looking at the Rangers coming into this season. Then against the West, they're 4-9-1. Against the East, they're 11-6. So it's interesting to see how things are kind of the opposite between Buffalo and the Rangers in terms of their play against conferences, which should bode well for the Rangers being 11-6 against the East. But recent play, they've only won 3 out of 14. So it doesn't really matter who they're playing right now, does it? October, they were 6-2-1. No problems. November, 7-7. Some concerns. And this month, they've been 2-6. They are spiraling out of the race. And as I mentioned before, the playoff chances, not great. So for the two Tire Fire teams, and I've got the Elmo Fire magnet here. I'm going to put that right down here. I would say the bigger tire fire is probably Buffalo, but the Rangers, they're kind of mucking around in that zone. They're getting close. And who goes next? So with Kakko out, who goes next with the Rangers? Who else is going to go? Is it Kreider? Do we see Keandre Miller get moved next? Is it, like, I didn't put Fox on the board because Fox isn't going anywhere. There's no way they trade Fox. But Lindgren could go. He's a pending UFA. And on the Buffalo side, they don't have a lot of like tantalizing pending UFAs who they can get a lot for. It's going to have to be, if it's not Byram, it's going to have to probably be one of the young players because Buffalo has a lot of young players in their lineup, which it feels like is a little different than with the New York Rangers situation. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding these teams. Which one do you think has been the bigger drama or the bigger surprise, and why is it the Rangers? And which team pulls themselves out of this first, and why is that the Rangers? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.